What is? Huh. I'm like, was that my phone? Well, good evening. Anybody have a hymn that they'd like us to sing tonight? 410. 410. 'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word, just to rest upon his promise, just to know, thus saith the Lord. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I prove him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. Oh, how sweet to trust in Jesus, just to trust his cleansing blood, just in simple faith to plunge me neath the healing cleansing flood. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I prove him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. I'm so glad I learned to trust him, precious Jesus, Savior, friend, and I know that he is with me, wilt be with me to the end. Jesus, Jesus, I trust him, how I prove him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, for grace to trust him more.
Well, good evening, everybody. Good to see you out tonight. Sunday is our Thanksgiving meal, so hope you'll avail yourself of that. And I think there's a sign-up sheet back there, so look forward to that. And then a couple of weeks, the next Sunday will be the 30th, but after that we're into December, so that's going to be a good month of stuff going on. So anyway. Christmas program's on the 14th. I think I'm doing the coconut story the 14th. And then, so anyway, stuff coming up. They started digging the holes on the fence, so that's exciting. And I'm not sure how much they'll get done tomorrow, but pray that all goes well and everything gets done properly. And I don't know of anything else going on. Tam, you know of anything? All right, I'm going to read you, this is November the 23rd, which is not today, but whoever wrote this said, I've always been glad, this is taken from Psalm 60, verse 3, thou hast showed thy people hard things. And she writes, the lady's name is Margaret Bottom, but here's what she wrote. I have always been glad that the psalmist said to God that some things were hard. There's no mistake about it. There are hard things in life. Some beautiful pink flowers were given to me this summer, and as I took them, I said, what are they? And the answer came, they are rock flowers. They grow and bloom only on rocks where you can see no soil. Then I thought of God's flowers growing in hard places. And I feel somehow that he may have a peculiar tenderness for his rock flowers that he may not have for his lilies and roses. The tests of life are to make us, not break us. Trouble may demolish a man's business, but build up his character. The blow at the outward man may be the greatest blessing to the inner man. If God then puts or permits anything hard in our lives, be sure that the real peril, the real trouble, is what we shall lose if we flinch or rebel against that. God gets his best soldiers out of the highlands of afflictions. So anyway, I was reading that. I thought, that's good. Some things are hard. It's difficult. So keep going. Amen. Just keep on keeping them. There's really not much alternative other than just not. You just got to keep going. All right, Dennis, come on up.
$397. I'm pressing on the upward way, new heights I'm gaining every day, still praying as I'm onward bound. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand by faith in heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Let's take a minute to shake hands.
Hang it in there.
Well, we'll sing verse 2 and 4. You can be seated. We'll start at verse 2. My heart has no desire to stay where doubts arise and fears dismay, though some may dwell where those abound. My prayer, my aim is higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand. Heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. I want to scale the utmost height and catch a gleam of glory bright, but still I'll pray till heaven I've found. Lord, lead me up to higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand by faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground.
Alrighty. The Hymn Stories, page 109 tonight. Great is thy faithfulness. And this is from Lamentations 3. Because of the Lord's great mercy, we're not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And the person writes here, one of the most important lessons for the children of Israel, one of the most important lessons the children of Israel learned during their wilderness journey was that God's provision of manna for them was on a morning-by-morning basis. They couldn't survive on old manna, nor could it be stored for future use. While many enduring hymns are born out of a particular dramatic experience, this was simply the result of the author's morning-by-morning realization of God's personal faithfulness in his daily life. Shortly before his death in 1960, Thomas Chisholm wrote this: "My income's never been large at any time due to impaired health in the early years, which has followed me until now. But I must not fail to record here the unfailing faithfulness of a covenant-keeping God, and that he has given me many wonderful displays of his providing care, which have filled me with astonishing gratefulness." Thomas Obadiah Chisholm was born in a crude log cabin in Franklin, Kentucky. From this humble beginning and without the benefit of high school or advanced education, he somehow began his career as a school teacher. Didn't have any education, but he was a school teacher. It says he began that at the age of 16 in the same country school where he had received his elementary training. After accepting Christ, he became the editor of the Pentecostal Herald and later was ordained as a Methodist minister. Throughout his long lifetime, he wrote more than 1,200 sacred poems, many of which have since become prominent hymn texts. Well, what he wrote there is on page 109, and I'll read through that, then we'll sing a little bit of it. "Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There's no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever wilt be. Summer and winter, and springtime and harvest, sun, moon, and stars in their courses above, join with all nature in manifold witness to thy great faithfulness, mercy, and love. Pardon for sin and a peace that endureth, thine own dear presence to cheer and to guide, strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow, blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning new mercies I see. All I have needed thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me." Isn't that awesome? It's a great, great reminder of God's faithfulness to him. Well, we'll sing the first and last verse. You can remain seated. Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever wilt be. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning I see all I have hath provided. That's good, Tam. That's good, y'all. Thanks, Tam. I don't know what happened, but something happened. I couldn't. Well, I had to cough. All right. Well, it is a wonderful hymn. We're going to go to Daniel chapter 5. You know, Daniel is loaded with memorable stories, and this is no exception. You know, you have the we refer to them as the three Hebrew children. Mitch, you might want to turn this down just a tad. You know, I think it's in chapter 3 where they're thrown in the fiery furnace. Chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar loses his mind, and we talked about that last time. And I didn't make a lot of application on that, but some of it kind of is repeated in chapter 5. Chapter 5 is the handwriting on the wall, which we all, I was reading somebody today that said, even if you've never been to church, you've heard of the handwriting on the wall. That's taken from Daniel chapter 5. Daniel chapter 6, I think, is Daniel in the lion's den. And then it continues, and a lot of prophecy after that. But so Daniel chapter 5, we've talked about how time has passed. In chapter 4, my Bible, it says it's BC 580. Chapter 3, it was 603. So there's an estimated 20 years that have passed between chapter 3 and 4. And then chapter 4 to chapter 5, some have estimated up to 17 years. And there's a lot of, debate on that. But some have put Daniel at age 82 in chapter 5. So he's getting up there. Some have conjectured that he's retired now, that he's kind of retired from the public office. I don't know. I don't know. But Belshazzar, if you look in chapter 5, verse 1, this is the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. So there was, I should have brought that to read to you. There's another guy before Belshazzar, and they might have reigned co-reigned together. I think his name was Nabonidus. He wasn't an offspring of Nebuchadnezzar. He was I think he married one of Nebuchadnezzar's daughter. But there was another one who was Nebuchadnezzar's son. His name was Evil Murdoch. And but we're beyond those guys now. So we're down to his grandson, Belshazzar. So Nebuchadnezzar's been dead for a while now. And but it's certainly likely and probable, certain, that Belshazzar knew all the stories about his grandpa and all the things that had happened, and the dream, and then the discipline of God, allowing him to lose his mind for a while, and then coming back to God. So you would think that Belshazzar had been exposed to the things of the Lord. And it's kind of like in our own families, There's times when our extended family, maybe not in our nuclear family, they certainly would be exposed to the things of God. But then when you get out to cousins and others, just because of them knowing you, they would learn some things about God. Well, Belshazzar, he was raised, he had to have known about the Lord. So pick it up in chapter 5, verse 1. And Belshazzar the king made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords and drank wine before the 1,000. Now, the way my brain thinks, I'm wondering if they put out a list and it was exactly 1,000 people, 1,000 lords. Now, that's not all who were there. I would say everybody who was anybody was at this great feast, okay? But this was a huge, lavish, large, banquet. And, what we think of, the way that we live now is not the way, they would live then. They would have multiple day banquets, multiple. They would really, what we would say, they would really enjoy themselves. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's the start of this. And, it's a huge feast, and there's thousands of people. You'll see later there's more than just these lords there. And my first thought on this is Belshazzar, he's just a foolish king. So he has this limitless, if you will, banquet. The largeness, the lords, the lavishness, it's a huge thing. And, they would pull out all the stops. Money would be no object. If So anyway. And then verse 2, it says, so Belshazzar, whiles he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the gold and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple, which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines might drink therein. If you remember back, I think it's chapter 1, if you want to flip back a couple of pages. Chapter 1, it tells us that they, when they destroyed Jerusalem, look at verse 2, Daniel 1:2. It says, and the Lord gave Jehoiakim king of Judah into his hand with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God, and he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. That land of Shinar would be Babylon. But so there's that. He had these vessels. Now, let me just insert this. So these first few verses, in my opinion, we see he's just a foolish king, and you'll see more about that in a minute. But he spares no expense. This is a limitless party, lavish, has all these lords, and who knows what they're ultimately would all do in something like that. But the fact is, this guy is he's living large. I mean, there's no scrimping or whatever. This is a big a big to do. The second thing is, though, that doesn't come out of the text here. And I thought about how to put this. If he's limitless, he's also reckless. And historians tell us that at this time, Babylon was being besieged by the Persians. And I think they had been besieging them for about 2 years or so. The interesting thing is that the Babylonians weren't that concerned about it. The reason being, their walls were humongous. I think I mentioned that last week. I did a little bit more research, and there's a lot of debate on even that. But I remember in Bible college, they taught me that, the width of the Babylonian walls, it was wide enough to have 4 chariots go around the top of them. I mean, there were some thick walls. I looked this up today. It says that the Babylonian walls were massive. They were almost one of the ancient wonders of the world. It says that that the Greek historian Herodotus, he claimed that they were 56 miles long. They were 80 feet thick. This building right here is probably, the width of it's probably 40 feet. Maybe. I don't know, it's probably, what do you think, Tom? 40 feet or so? Yeah. 30, 40, yeah. So think about that. And they had double walls in some places. I think this particular time they had 8 different gates. If you think about 80 feet thick, that is massive. Again, the Greek historian, who in my opinion would be closer to this than we are, they estimated the height of the walls 320 feet high. That's 32 stories. That is a humongous wall. So the Babylonians and the Euphrates River ran through the city. So they had a constant supply of water. They had these walls that were massive, and you can study that on, there's a lot of debate on if they were actually that large or if they were exaggerating. But the thing is, they believed they were protected by these walls. They had enough food in Babylon to last them 20 years. So besieging them for a couple of years, that's not bothering them. They're not, whatever. So they have a 20-year supply of food. They have a constant supply of water. They have these walls that are massive. And so the city is besieged. Again, as I was reading Matthew Henry today, he brings it out, and so did somebody else.
The historians tell us that Cyrus most probably was aware of this banquet. I mean, this is a huge banquet, you know. And so he was aware that there was this big drunken party going on. And many have speculated that he had decided, that Cyrus had decided he would attack them on this night after they became drunk and, you know, kind of out of their minds or whatever. Belshazzar would have known that he was vulnerable, but he didn't care. Belshazzar thought that the walls would protect him and that the water would provide. Do you know how Cyrus attacked them? They diverted the river and they came under the walls where the river was running. And that's how they got in the city. And they destroyed them. So you remember we were talking about the gold and then the silver statue, whatever? Well, the gold was Nebuchadnezzar or Babylon. Well, at the end of this chapter, it goes to the next part of the body. It's done. Babylon's done. And that was prophesied by God as well. But as I outline this today, I just kind of stay with me, guys and ladies. This guy was foolish. He had this limitless resource to put on this party, but he was just goofy. I mean, you would have thought he would have had some kind of system in place to protect his people. Not to get way ahead of myself, but listen, y'all, this king, in my opinion, is the exact picture of people who reject God. They think nothing's ever going to happen to them. They think, as long as they've got food and water and provision, they think their ideology, their wisdom is going to protect them, but it's not. So, Belshazzar here, although he felt protected, he wasn't. In our world today, people think about, I think this is hilarious when they talk about science today. And in our political scene, it's absolutely hilarious. They'll say, we're the party of science. One party will say that, and the other party will say, yeah, right. You're the party that doesn't believe in two genders, but you're the party of science. But we live in a world today that thinks science is going to disprove God. Not going to happen. People aren't protected by science. I remember a young person who was making fun of Christians because they didn't believe in evolution. And they were basically saying, well, y'all don't even believe in science. Okay, well, let me just tell you something. If you think that a lizard one day turns into a bird the next, that's not science. Okay? That's not science. That's a fiction. It is science. Science fiction is what it is. But we're the ignorant ones. There's no way that's possible. But honestly, as I studied this today, I see the world in Belshazzar. The world thinks this: we're right, we're protected, we're provided for, nothing's ever going to happen. Not only that, it doesn't stop there. He had this limitless idea and reckless, but keep reading in chapter 1. Look what he says, verse 3. Then they brought in the gold, they brought the gold vessels that were taken out of the temple to the house of God, which were at Jerusalem, and the kings, and here's the group that was there. The kings and his princes and his wives and his concubines drank in them. And they drank wine, and they praised the gods of gold and of silver and of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. So not only was this guy limitless and reckless, but he was actually godless. He had absolutely no fear of God. He absolutely rejected the idea that there was a God in heaven in control. Did not believe that one bit. I think I mentioned this to you all the other day. I read somewhere Arnold Schwarzenegger said, if you believe something happens after you die, he said, you're a fool. Nothing happens after you die. According to who? You? Because there's writings that are a lot been around a lot longer than he's been alive that say there is, and it's the Bible. But this guy's godless. He's reckless. He's limitless. He seems to be fearless at this point. I mean, they're hooping it up. They're having a big party. I'm telling you, it just reminds me of the world we live in today. They have absolutely no fear of God, no regard for God, no reality that God exists. In their mind, God's dead, but He's not. And poor old Belshazzar here, even though he's in his pride and he's in his pomp and he's in his position of authority, God's getting ready to humble him. And He's going to prove to him that there is a God in heaven. And it just, and I don't mean to be unkind, but people who live like this, guys and ladies, let me show you a verse that came to my mind when I was reading this. Flip over to Psalm chapter 73 quickly. Hey, Britt, hit the fan button on that, one of those to get some air circulating because it's a little warm. Look at Psalm 73. You remember that sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, by Jonathan Edwards? I mean, we haven't, I'm sure you probably have heard that, or at least heard about it. Look at verse number 18 of Psalm 73. It says, "Surely thou didst set them in slippery places." Now this is speaking of the fool. Look up in verse number 3. "For I was envious at the foolish when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. For there are no bands in their death." The word bands there means pain. Their strength is firm. They're not in trouble as other men. Neither are they plagued like other men. Their pride compasses them about as a chain. Violence covers them as a garment. Their eyes stand out with fatness. They have more than a heart could wish. They're corrupt. They speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily. They set their mouths against the heavens. Their tongue walks through the earth. Their message goes all over. Therefore His people return hither, and waters of a full cup are wrung out to them. And here's what they say: "How doth God know, and is there knowledge in the Most High? Behold, these are the ungodly who prosper in the world, and they increase in riches." But look now, so that's the guys. Now look at verse 18. "Surely thou, or God, didst set them in slippery places. Thou cast them down into destruction. How are they brought into desolation as in a moment?" Exactly what happens to Belshazzar. And then it says this: "They are utterly consumed with terrors." Those people who have rejected God, that sermon, "Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God," the preacher there describes the human being held over hell, and he's suspended by a cobweb. And that cobweb is basically his wisdom, his ways, his works, and he thinks that cobweb is going to keep him safe from the burning hells of fire. And as soon as the fire hits that cobweb, it's going to snap. Belshazzar's a foolish king. Psalm 14:1 says, "The fool has said in his heart, there is no God." I was envy at the foolish. Let me show you something else. Go to Job chapter 20. Job chapter 20. Job's right before Psalms, by the way. Job chapter 20, and I don't have time to read this whole chapter, but the whole chapter is a description of what happens to the person who rejects God. Look in verse number 4. "Knowest thou not this of old, since man was placed upon the earth, that the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite is but for a moment? Though his excellency mounts up to the heavens, and his head reaches unto the clouds, yet he shall perish forever like his own dung. And they which have seen him shall say, Where is he? He shall fly away as a dream, and shall not be found. He shall be chased away as a vision in the night. The eye also which saw him shall see him no more, neither shall his place any more behold him." This whole chapter is that. Look in verse number 22. In the fullness of his sufficiency, he shall be in straits or dire straits. Every hand of the wicked shall come upon him. When he's about to fill his belly, God shall cast the fury of his wrath upon him and shall rain it upon him while he's eating. And I'm telling you, this is an exact picture of Belshazzar. And when he shall flee from the iron weapon, and the bow of steel shall strike him through. It is drawn and comes out of the body, yea, the glittering sword comes out of his gall. Terrors are upon him. All darkness shall be hidden in secret places. A fire not blown shall consume him. It shall go ill with him that is left in his tabernacle. The heavens shall reveal his iniquity, and the earth shall rise up against him. The increase of his house shall depart. His goods shall flow away in the day of his wrath. This is the portion of a wicked man from God, and the heritage appointed unto him by God. Hey guys and ladies, that's the end of humanity without God right there. Now our world says, it's baloney, I don't believe the Bible. I bet you if we could interview Belshazzar at the beginning of the evening, he would have said the same thing. All those old timers talk about God, but there is no God. And God, God can't see, God can't hear, and God's not going to do anything about it. He was a foolish king. And I don't know, I'm not one of those people that loves to blame the church for the condition of the world we live in. Guys will get up and say, well, if the church did a better job. I get that. I have a hard time preaching that the church has failed. But I can tell you this, listen, guys and ladies, we as a church, and I don't mean just Robinson Street, but the body of Christ needs to be the light of the world. Because this world is dark. Mark, we were talking about, I watched this a biography of C.S. Lewis. At the very end of that movie, C.S. Lewis at one time was an atheist, and he calls himself the most reluctant convert. But at the end of that little movie that I watched, one of the things he said that he learned through this transition of becoming born again is that man is not mortal. Man's not mortal. We talk about mortal man. He said, no. He said, when you look at your neighbor's immortal. He's either going to heaven or hell forever. That'll change the way we look at life. Poor old Belshazzar, he thought there was no God. Number 2, go back to Daniel chapter 5. So he was a foolish king. And then look at verse number 5. In the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand, and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace, and the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Why do you think that the hand wrote over by the candlestick? Because that's where it was illuminated. Everybody could see it. There's 1,000 lords there. There's who knows how many people in total were there, but there was a lot of people, and they're witnessing this. And Belshazzar goes from being foolish. Look what it says in verse number 6. Then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loosed, and his knees smote one against another. It scared him to death. He turned pale, and he was trembling at what he was watching. He goes from being the proud, fearless, to the puny, fearful. It scares him to death. There's going to be a day, I hate to say it, but all of these people who reject God are going to stand before a holy God. And they're not going to stand in their pride that day. They will bow and submit to him because he is the king. So he's sitting there, his knees are knocking. Look at verse number 7. And the king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. And the king spake and said to the wise men of Babylon, whosoever shall read this writing and show me the interpretation thereof shall be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about his neck and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. So we see the sign, the writing on the wall. Then we see the scene is the Belshazzar scared to death. And then we have the search for the answer. Again, just the way my mind works. That's the world. The world wants to go to the wisdom of the world, the astrologers, the wise men, all the soothsayers, it says here, to figure out what the answer is. But the answer is not in the world. The answer is in another world. It's up there. That's the answer. And in that search, look what happens. Verse number 8, then came in the king's wise men, but they couldn't read the writing, nor make known to the king the interpretation thereof. They didn't get it. The natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God. They are spiritually discerned. 1 Corinthians 2:14, y'all remember that. The natural man doesn't get it. The spiritual man gets it. And in this passage, he's looking to the natural man for the answer, and they don't have the answer. So look what happens in verse number 9. Then was King Belshazzar greatly troubled, and his countenance was changing in him, and his lords were astonished. He got even more scared. He's thinking these guys are going to come in and get me off the hook. By the way, if you, I didn't bring it in with me, I guess, but in one of my commentaries, the guy wrote out the lettering of this phrase, mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. And it's just a bunch of consonants. And if you string it out in one sentence, it's a long string of consonants. And they said it may have been that way. Of course, in Hebrew, you read backwards. Okay, so it would have started over on the right side and read to the left. But if it was up on the wall and it was just these consonants, they couldn't have interpreted it. He said, or it might have been written in 4 different lines. We don't know. But he said when the world looked, the worldly guys, they looked at it, they had no clue. And the reason they had no clue is because they didn't have the mind of God. They didn't have a spiritual mind to look at it. And that's important because you're going to see how Belshazzar describes Daniel. So the search is on. And then look at verse number 10. Now the queen, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, means this. So when this writing on the wall came out, somebody ran to the queen and said, hey, you're not going to, evidently she wasn't there. You're not going to believe what happened. There was a hand that's writing on the wall. And so she comes to the banquet. Verse number 10. She came into the banquet house, and the queen spake and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor let thy countenance be changed. There's a man in thy kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods, and in the days of thy father, light and understanding and wisdom. Light, understanding, and wisdom. That's a description, guys and ladies, of the child of God. Ephesians 5, we're to walk as children of light. 1 Corinthians 2, we have been given understanding by the Spirit of God. James chapter 1, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God. We are to have light, understanding, and wisdom as people of God. And we do have that. We have the understanding that this world wasn't created by what we see. It was created by God. Well, anyway, she gives that description. And then, keep reading. She says, the wisdom of the gods was found in him, whom the king Nebuchadnezzar, thy father, the king, and it was his grandfather, I say, thy father made master of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. For as much as an excellent spirit in knowledge and understanding, interpreting of dreams, and showing of hard sentences and dissolving of doubts were found in the same Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation. So, my outline, there was the sign, the writing on the wall. The scene, the king's fearful. There was the search, and they didn't find anything, and then they bump into the servant of God. And the servant of God is going to reveal to them their dilemma. You're on your way to hell, you need to get right. Okay, that's the idea. Well, so look what happens. Verse 13. Then was Daniel brought in, this is the servant of God, before the king. And the king spake and said, Daniel, art thou the Daniel which are the children of the captivity of Judah, whom the king my father brought out of Jewry? I have even heard of thee that the spirit of the gods is in thee, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom is found in thee. So there's the description of the servant of God. He's a man of light, of understanding, and wisdom. Verse 15. And now the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought in before me that they should read this writing, make known unto me the interpretation thereof. But they couldn't show the interpretation of the thing. And I've heard of thee that thou canst make interpretations and dissolve doubts. Now if thou canst read the writing and make known to me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about thy neck and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Said, man, if you can do this, we're going to give you all kinds of stuff. And I love Daniel's answer. Look at verse 17. Daniel answered and said before the king, let thy gifts be to thyself, give thy rewards to another. He said, I don't want your money. I don't want your money. I don't want your gold. He says, yet I will read the writing unto the king and make known to him the interpretation. His motive was not money, guys. And as children of God, of course, I know I'm preaching the choir here, but as servants of God, guys and ladies, we share the gospel not out of a monetary concern. We're to share the light of the gospel to the lost world. Verse number 18. So here, guys and ladies, begins Daniel's reminder. He's going to remind Belshazzar of some things, okay? And here he goes. And you'll be familiar with this. Verse 18. O thou king, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father a kingdom, and majesty, and glory, and honor. And for the majesty that he gave him, all people, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him, whom he would slew, and whom he kept alive, and whom he would he set up, and whom he would he put down. He's recounting the power and authority that Nebuchadnezzar had that was given to him by God. Verse 20. But when his heart was lifted up, and his mind hardened in pride, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beast, and his dwelling was with the wild asses. They fed him with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High God ruled in the kingdom of men, and that he appointed over it whomsoever he will. Here, guys and ladies, in those few verses is the evidence of God. I mean, it's indisputable. It was unbelievable, but it was the evidence for God. Belshazzar had heard that, I'm sure, his whole life. And God had been made evident to the life of Belshazzar. Belshazzar rejected the evidence of God. He rejected the evidence of God. That's the world we live in. The creation, guys and ladies, is evidence of God. But even if you reject that, let me show you a verse. Go to, we got to hurry, go to Hebrews chapter 11 quickly. Hebrews chapter 11, look at verse number 3. I'm sure you're familiar with this, but Hebrews 11:3. Through faith we understand the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of the things which do appear. You see that? The things which are seen are not made of the things which do appear. The creation, guys and ladies, speaks of the glory and the majesty and the power of God. It's also mentioned in Romans chapter 1. Flip back in Romans chapter 1 and look what it says, verse number 19. It says, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it unto them. For the invisible things of Him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even His eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. You say, what is He talking about? The creation is evidence for God. Okay? Belshazzar had more than the creation. He had a revelation, a personal revelation in his family that God was real. And he rejected it. We today, guys and ladies, have the creation. Doesn't matter what the scientists say. I get this thing every day in my inbox from the Creation Museum, and it's a little, it's a little thing that just proves that God was the creator. But evolution has so many holes in it. But creation, in my opinion, proves the existence of God. But beyond that, guys, there's conviction. Where does conviction come from? The conviction that you're not living right, doing right, being right. Then there's the confession of people who have met God. Then there's the conversion of people who you can't explain. You have all of those things in today's world, and they still reject Christ. They still say that God's not real. Belshazzar has rejected the evidence of God. That's the world we live in. Not only that, he refused the preeminence of God. Look what it says in verse number 21 again. And he was driven from the sons of men. His heart was made like the beast, and thy dwelling was with the wild asses. They fed him with grass like oxen. His body was wet with the dew of heaven. Now look how he's described here. till he knew that the Most High God ruled in the kingdom of men, and that he appoints over it whomsoever he will. The Most High God is a reference to none higher than God. He's the Almighty Sovereign. He is the King. He is in control. He is the commander. He's the ruler and the reigner over all of the universe. But not for Belshazzar. Belshazzar says this, well, he ain't my God. He's not my king. He ain't ruling over me. Well, you drop down to about verse number 30, and he was ruling over him. Look what it says. In that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. He got killed that night. He rejected the evidence of God. He refused the preeminence of God. I can't tell you guys how that is such an accurate picture of the world today. Our world today wants to be in command. They want to be in control. They want to be the king, and they want to act as if they are God. They're not. He rejected the evidence. He refused the preeminence, guys and ladies, but there was one last thought about him. He received the sentence from God. He's not getting away from that. Verse 22, here it is. Here's the sentence. O thou son, O Belshazzar, hast not humbled thine heart, though thou knewest all this. You knew it all, but you didn't humble your heart. Look what he did. But you have lifted up yourself against the Lord of heaven. And they brought the vessels of his house before thee, and thou and thy lords, thy wives, thy concubines have drank wine, and thou hast praised the gods of silver, gold, brass, iron, wood, and stone, which sees not, nor hears, nor knows, and the God in whose hand thy breath is. That's a pretty telling statement. Tammy and I were eating lunch today. She went and got her hair cut, and the lady that cut her hair said she's going to a funeral tomorrow. Tammy said, oh, well, I'm sorry, you know. And she said, the lady who died was 79 years old. She'd been to the doctor 2 days before, and the doctor gave her a complete, clear bill of health. Said, your heart's good, everything's good. That night, she told her son that she was going to bed at 10 o'clock. She said, I'm going to take a shower and I'm going to go to bed. The son said, good night, Mom, love you. Went in at 10 o'clock and went to bed. He heard his mother, before he fell asleep, using the hairdryer to blow her hair dry. He awakened during the night, sometime 2 or 3 in the morning, something like that. And he heard the hairdryer still running. He went in there and his mother had collapsed and was dead. She'd just been to the doctor, told her she had a clean bill of health. She died. I want to tell you, and I told Tammy, I said, you know what, Tammy? That just reminds me, because I've been studying this all day, but I said, that reminds me that God is the one who's in control of our days. Look at Psalm 39. Psalm 39, I'm almost through, y'all. Psalm 39, and look, I think it's verse number 4. Psalm 39 and verse number 4. Lord, y'all with me? Psalm 39:4. Lord, make me to know mine end and the measure of my days, what it is, that I may know how frail I am. I was thinking this morning, I studied this a little bit, and I thought, what if God lets you see your end date? I don't want to know it. Just me, I'd worry myself sick. Every day I got closer, I'd get sicker and sicker. Isn't it interesting? David said, Lord, let me know how long I've got. Because he's the one who's in control of how long we have. Belshazzar was sentenced from God. Quickly, let's read what that sentence was. He says in verse number 24, then was the part of the hand sent from him, and his writing was this. Verse 25, this is the writing that was written, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing, meaning God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. It was repeated, meany, because that means it was confirmed, certified, certain. And what does it say? Verse number 26, this is the interpretation of that. God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Babylon's done. The next one, Tekel, thou art weighed in the balance and art found wanting or lacking. You have been weighed personally. The kingdom's over, and you as a king, when it comes to your duty, responsibility, opportunity before God, you didn't measure up. That's what he's saying. You're done. Verse number 28, Perez, the kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. So, he tells them, Babylonians done, you're done, and the kingdom has been given to the Medes and the Persians. Keep reading, we're almost through. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet, put a chain of gold about his neck, made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. And in verse 30, and that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain, and Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. That's it. So what was the end? He died without God. You know, we're living in a world today, maybe it's because the church has failed, I don't know. Or maybe it's just because we're getting closer to the end days. But folks, we're living in a time where people absolutely do not believe in God. But the fact is, He is real. And He does reign. And He will require a judgment. And Belshazzar found that out about a millisecond after he died. It's a sad story. And that's the end of Belshazzar. And then we'll go into chapter 6 for Daniel. So, you know, what I learned from that, guys, mainly was those 3 points. He rejected the evidence of God. He refused the preeminence of God, and he received the sentence. And that's exactly what happens to people who reject God. And that's not a pretty picture. So we ought to pray for those, that, especially in our circle of influence that we have, that the Lord would help us to lead them to Christ. All right, well, there you've been Pastor Ash for that.